Kerry says in response to this report, actually this is a spokesperson, I should say, for John Kerry. Like America's closest allies, he believes it is important that the nuclear agreement, which took the world years to negotiate, remain effective as countries focus on stability in the region. So again, John Kerry really likes the agreement. He really wants it to stick. He wants it to stay. I guess the big question is he actually crossing a line? It feels almost like a kind of espionage if he's out there talking to the Iranians and talking to the French and saying, no, wait, we can make this happen. Is he basically overusing his former position? Here to answer that, former Assistant Secretary of State under President George W. Bush, Robert Charles. Robert, I mean, I saw this story and I thought, my goodness, I mean, they talk about Trump colluding with the Russians. How about Kerry colluding with the Iranians? It seems as though if the president is trying to negotiate some kind of better deal, I guess I just have to ask, what's Kerry doing in there mixing it up?
Yeah, Trish, you're exactly right, and your analysis is exactly right. It's very disappointing. At best, it's a gross indiscretion. At worst, it's really extreme disloyalty. And, you know, it's hard to get inside John Kerry's head. I'm not sure I'd want to be there, but he believes that he's doing God's work, no doubt, out there. This is the same guy that opposed the Vietnam War and called it a war crime. It's the same guy that opposed the 2001 George W. Bush withdrawal from the ABM, Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, and it would be as if he was over with the Russians trying to figure out a way how to not get out of the ABM treaty. It does raise legal issues, and there are two of them right off the top. You mentioned the Logan Act. It's difficult. That act hasn't been enforced in 119 years, although it has been referred to by the Supreme Court 3 times. It is an act that prevents exactly what you suggest. It prevents someone from doing private diplomacy, no matter how smart they think they are. The second piece of it is Article 3, Section 3, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution, which says that you cannot provide aid and comfort or adhere to the enemy. And I think there is, frankly, just about no country in the world that fits more precisely into the definition of a sworn enemy of the United States than Iran. You know, my final thought for you is on this, sort of what do you do about it? People say, well, prosecute. And, you know, again, it's an iffy proposition. You know, Professor Dershowitz up at Harvard has said that it's probably unconstitutionally vague, the Logan Act, and if it is, then let's just get it off the books, and if it isn't, then let's use it.
But it seems certainly disloyal, if nothing else.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's extreme disloyalty. I would say the 4 things you ought to do right now is the Justice Department ought to issue a cease and desist order and say, just stop doing this. He's been for months negotiating with the foreign minister of Iran. The second thing I think I'd do is do exactly what Sally Yates did to Mike Flynn. I'd send 2 or 3 FBI agents over and have a debrief and say exactly what information did you share as a former Secretary of State with Iran, as well as with the Europeans. Third thing I would do, I think, you know, whether you call that an investigation or a matter, doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is I would send somebody over there to talk with him. And the third thing I would do is he has a courtesy clearance that he maintains as a Secretary of State, former. I think I would suspend that temporarily and sit down with him at the State Department and say, what exactly did you provide? I think the agency, the CIA, might also have a discussion with him. The last thing I think I might do is have the White House counsel issue some kind of a deterrent letter saying, henceforth and forevermore, we frown on the idea of you going over and encouraging another country to negotiate against the United States in an area that governs national security.
It's unbelievable. Jimmy Carter did a bit of this too, didn't he, Robert?
You know, not really. Jimmy Carter was kind of a free agent that everybody understood was Jimmy Carter, and he would go over and try to get people released from foreign countries like Bill Richardson did. And you know, honestly, it's not this kind of an egregious offense. What you're talking about, Trish, is months of negotiation behind the scenes, genuine shadow diplomacy. He's got his own private State Department working here trying to undermine the president, and I think that goes to a bigger point. Very simply put, he has not accepted the 2016 election results and still wants to play the game he played before. Wow. Wow. So what would you advise the Trump administration to do on this? Just sit him down and say, what'd you say, and don't do it again? Yeah, I think you start there. I mean, if it turns out that he has shared information to which he was privileged by virtue of his clearance, and then that raises that raises another question.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, right, Robert? Because they're going on and on and on about the Russians, and I'm like, wait a second, this guy's talking to the Iranians.
Yeah, and he's more than talking. He's really having conversations about how to prevent the withdrawal.
Robert, it's good to see you. Thank you.
You too,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
to have your perspective. All right.